So these are the elements we are going to be discussing under HTML form. I've started with my HTML template, and I have my CSS linked to my HTML. So we're going to start with this. This is open in Live Server. Okay, this is it. This is open in Live Server. So the first element we are going to be looking at is the input, or let's look at label. We are dealing with this now. So, well, first of all, before you get to start writing forms are contained in the form element. So once you write form, and you can actually select the get or post if you are using get or post method, but for now let's just use form. And this is how it comes: form action, and you can come here and add method post or method get, depends on the form, as we were taught by Mr. Skyline. So this action now tells it, if I click, maybe if I submit, it should go to this page. This is the form handler. If I submit, what happens? This page, the page I will put inside here, maybe what I'll put here will be my index dot php or maybe index.html. So if I'm telling my form that once I submit, direct me to this page. So this is called the form handler. This page, you now do the maths concerning the form, whether it's to submit to the database or is to compare this or that, depending on what you do this page to do. So before I start writing the first element in my form, let's just omit this now, since we are not going to submit it to any database. The first element of my form will be label, and if you say label, it gives you this completion, telling you label for what, label for what. For example, I want to just write a name field, a form which says enter your name. I'll say label for, maybe I say name, or maybe I say first name, F name. It's just a name. You can just write anything. It's just like you write your classes in CSS, or you write your IDs in CSS. This thing is just like a name for this form. And what will be inside this label will be, let me say, enter your first name. That is it. Enter your first name. Let me give a colon, and I save. Now it has appeared here, but there's no form to enter your first name. What do you now do? You write input. Input now is the actual form. This label is just like a label. What you name your form is just like a label. So input now, for example, you can say input. If you look at it, you have input button, input checkbox, input for email. You also have input for password, input for other things. But let's take it step by step. You can just say input and enter. It will complete it for you like this. This is a general input for type text. If I save this, see what happens. It's telling you now this is the form label. The form label, and this is where you now type, enter your first name. You type my name is Terence. That is all about form. Now if we need to have a submit button here, what we'll have is input, and the type will be submit. If you look at it here, you also see something like that. This is input type submit. But for now, let's just go with the general input, and take enter. They're asking us the type, and we're going to say submit and save. So type submit always comes as a button because it's a submit button. Type submit comes as a button. Look at it. So for example, If we have another page, let's assume we have another page in our document here. Let's call it index.html, and in this index.html, what we have here is just a text. Let's call it home, and here we just have h1, and we call it this is my home page, and save. Now if we go back to our form, this is our form. Let's open it on live server. This is it. If we now say this is our form code, we now say this form should, on submit, what should happen? The action should be home.html. We are telling it that once we submit, it should pass our data to this page. So let's try it here. If I type maybe Terence, and it's passing our data to this page, it is also changing to this page. Maybe if I take submit home.html, let's check what our home is called. Okay, index.html, not home.html. Now it's trying to tell us it cannot find home.html. So what I'll do is I'll change it to index.html, index, because that is actually the name of my page which I want to go to after submitting my form. So I'll save, refresh this, and I'll say type my name again and submit. See what happens. So this is how you create menus on saying, or links. After, when you click on this menu of home, it takes you to this page. You click on this, it takes you to this page. This is how it is done. This is how it is done. If you click on submit or click on any button, it will take you to another page. This is just how it is done. You action equal the name of the page you want to go to. Now I'm going to remove all of these two values, this input and the submit button. I'm going to remove them, and I'll be left with my form only, with my label in the form, and I'll save. I'm back to this point. Now the easier way is, if we want to get an input text, an input form, sorry, we get input. Since we are using VS Code, VS Code also supports us. We can actually look for what we want here. This is text. Once you click here, it now gives you a better form of it, where you can be able to specify some values. Now it has given you text as the type. Let's save it like this. This is it. It's fine. Now this name attribute, let's say name, by giving it a name of first name, it will not change anything. This name is only important for the server, for people doing the back end. If you are doing the back end, your back end programmer will now say what is collecting from you is the name, this word now given to this form of input. So if your form only says enter your first name, and this first name is supposed to be stored in the database, what the back end programmer will do is he will come to you, who is the front end programmer, and say, okay, what is the name of your form? What is the name of your input field, where the user will input his first name? What you need to give to that back end person is just this name, so that anything a user enters here, this will now be a variable holding anything the user enters here. Even if the user enters A, B, anything the user enters here will be, this will be holding it. This will be the variable holding this value. For example, what I'm trying to say is, in mathematics, you say x is equal to 5. Now they can ask you, give me x. You give the person x. They can also ask you, what is x? X will be 4. You say x is 4. Now if you decide to say x is 5. They ask you what is x, you know x is 5. So this value now, this file name, this first name you see here stands for x. So anything x is taken here will go into file name. So it's the same thing like saying even if you say x is 9, the value of x has changed. If you input 6, the value of x has changed to 6. It's the same thing with this. If you input another name here, the value of this has changed. So you can even remove this and put x if you wish. You understand? You can remove this and put x. Mr. I would like you to say Grace. I would like you to say something so that I know you are there. If you don't have much background on your side, you can unmute your mic.
I'm here, bro.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so it's in programming. It is always good to use names that someone can understand. At least, even if the person did not code with you, but the person can understand what you are trying to talk about. That's why I cannot use. That's why I don't want to use X here. At least, if I use first name and someone sees my code, the person will know it is first name, and then this ID should conform to its label ID. So this label is label for what? For the first name or for this input. So this f name here is the ID. So I'll say f name here too. Even if you don't use this as we have done now, it will still work. But this is the approach you should use to make it easier for you to understand, and for other calculations, maybe the backend person will need this, and maybe you need to do something with this ID for this input later. Maybe when styling it, you can use ID to capture this. So you look at all these things I've added here, it doesn't still change our form, it's still the same thing, but it's very important in some cases. It's for best practice, let's just work this way. So this is the input form. We're going to go to the next. We have done input, we have done label. This is the label, which labels your inputs. And next we are going to do is select. So select is just a kind of input form that, for example, you can have multiple choice questions, and in that multiple choice questions you are able to select more than one items or more than one answer in your question. But those boxes you see there are called select. For example, I say select. Okay, let me say label. Let me use another label for I can say answers. Label for answers, and I'll give it maybe what is your best programming language, and I save this. Now it appears on the same line because these are inline elements. What I'll do is I'll just put a BR here. BR, whether caps or no caps, is the same thing. Just put a BR here for break and save. So you see it has appeared on the next line now. So what is your best programming language? For the label, and select now comes in. Select, I can now choose my select here if it's disabled or not disabled, but it's not disabled, so you can choose select without disable. We'll come to disable. Select, the name will be which name can we give to it? Language. Name will be language. Just give it language, and this ID will also conform to its 4. and inside the select, look, watch the way it goes. Inside the select, we are going to have options. You have options like those multiple choice questions. You have options to select from. So we can have option here. And to take option, you get the first value you have. For example, let's omit this value. It's important for backend programmers, but I'll show you how it's used. The first option we have HTML. The second option we have CSS. No, not there. We're putting it inside here, CSS. I'm going to remove this value. We're coming to it. We have Python option of we have Python here. Python option. This is the last option. And we have option, and we have, let's say, PHP, and we save. Now, select always comes as a drop box. Select always comes like it's always a drop down something. So if we click on this now, we get to see all our options. You can actually choose this, or choose this. Now, this is how select is used. You can decide to say, okay, what state are you from? What state are you from? And the options here will be Imo State. Another option will be Lagos State. Another option will be Abia State, and the last option will be Delta State. And save. See how select come. So what state are you from? You can select your state. You can select this, just like a drop down. Now if I want, by default I have this, maybe Abia State as the default. That's how I can use an attribute to make this to default. For example, I use selected here and save. See what happens. My form now has Abia State as the first. It's not really the first in the form, but once you reload your page, anytime you enter the website, you see Abia State already highlighted for you. So even if you don't select anything, your default will be this. Now I can add the first value on my options and say what I'll have here is in brackets. I know why I'm putting in brackets, so that it's going to look different. And say select one, and I save. And here I'm going to make it selected and save. And I'm going to remove this other selected from Abia State and save. Now see how it looks like. It looks better. Now what we have here as the first value as the default value for the select, which is drop down, is select one. It's telling the user select one. You understand? It's telling the user select one. Now this is all about select, which is the drop down. This is all about it. Now if we want to give it a value such that, now this is a form, this is what the end user sees, but if this end user selects this, what happens? How will the back-end person know that actually the person has selected Imo State? What you need to do is you give it values. These values now is what the back-end person will see. Is what the back-end person will see. That's the return of this select form will be these values. If the person selects Imo State, this select button or this select form will give the back-end user an answer that okay, your user has selected this. If the person selects this same thing will give it an answer that it has selected this. So what is it that the form will say the person has selected? It will be the values you put inside the value. So for example, I can say here, I can leave this empty because it's just an empty something. I can come here and say select the value of this can be state 1. The value of this can be state 2. The value of this can be state 3, and the value of this one can be state 4. Now the back-end user will say, the back-end user will receive from this select form or this select input form that the user has selected. For example, I select this Lagos State. The back-end person will receive that the user has selected state 1. Okay, now let me show you how this back-end person will receive it. For example, I come here now and say method. I'm going to put this method to get. For one reason, get is not secured, but I'm going to use this form method to get so that we can actually see what happens. We can actually see what happens when we submit this form, and I'm going to put a submit button under here, input type submit, so that when we submit the form, we see what the backend person will see, what the backend person will get. Submit, the value of this will be submit. So this is the submit form. Just like input type, you choose the submit, and the value, this value you are seeing here is what will appear on the button. For the form is what will appear on the button. So we are treating this form, this input button now. So I'm going to save it, Control S to save, and you see if I change this value here to maybe SU and save, you see what happens. But this submit is telling it what I want for you is get my data here and send it to this page via the get method. So I have submit, or let me just write send message. So you see what is happening. I can come to my select and get a BR. If you're writing this BR in caps, it always appears like this, BR, and save. Now it's under. I just wanted it to be under. So if I send this, let me fill all of these terrains, let me put it in caps, and also select Lagos State. Once I send this, you see I sent this. I use the submit button. When I click submit, it's going to send every data I've entered on my form to this page using the get method. Now see how it works. See how the get method works. Look at my URL. My URL is saying first name. See, this is index page. First name equal to Terence, and language equal to state. State which is written there. I think I made the error somewhere, but it's not really an error. It's still a name. Language is equal to state. This is supposed to be state 2, and this can be state 4. So you see what is happening. It said what I selected was Lagos State. That time it was state. Let me do it again. Let me refresh my page so that we can see it. Now I'm going to select Terence. I'm going to select Abia State, and send. So it changes. My code tells it if I take select, what happens to my form action? Go to index page, pass it these values. But now I'm using the get method. So get is not secured. You can only use get when you are dealing with maybe you are dealing with on something you don't want to secure, but all these secure some things, like you don't use get, you use post. For example, I'm using get now. It has stored it, it has opened this page and passed these values to it: first name Terence, language state 3. Now this is what the back-end person will see. The back-end person only will see, will use first name. It doesn't care about Terence. It's what he's saving in the database is not Terence. It's saving first name for your session. So anything you put as your first name, it doesn't concern him. What he knows is saving first name. So you as the front end person, you are giving what you are giving to the back end person to save is the first name, not Terence, because you don't know what the end user will input. And you also give him language. The language is this name you use there. Every field has a name, and that name is what the back end person will use. It doesn't, you as a front end person, that name, where if you put it or you don't put it, it doesn't mean anything to you. But because you are creating it for back end person to use, you have to put this name to help the back end person to know, okay, this is what you give to me. I just need the name, or use the name and manipulate it my own way. Tell the name where to save and what to do with the name. Maybe the back end person will say, okay, compare name. If name is in my database, you give me access. If name is not in my database, don't give me access. So that is how this works. Let me change this to method post, and I'll save. Then I'll go back, I'll enter another name and select something. Now post doesn't display it on the URL. It's more, that's why it's more secure. See what happens. Refresh, enter another name, select this, and I take send. See what is happening. Post is not, doesn't display this on our URL. It doesn't, but get will do this and display it on our URL. So that's the difference between those two. So the next we are going to check is text area. Still in this form, forms are styled just like in CSS. You can, to style these forms, you can always go to your CSS and target label, give it font type, font family, or margin bottom or anything. So maybe after this input, you can target this input. We'll learn how to target this input. You give it margin bottom to give a space between this and this. So the next value form element we are going to look at is text area. So I'm going to remove all of this. I believe we've done something on all of this. Let me just remain with my form and I'll save my page, so everything is gone. So we're going to look at label 4. We know label 4, we know what it stands for. Let's just type here, enter your message, and forward message. Message is just like an ID or a class for label. So, and I would like to put a BR here. So text area, input, text area is input. Forms are mostly input, except for a few of them like select. If you look at this, you will see, look at this, you have so many of them. You have dates, you can always try all of them. Text area are just like text. I don't see it here, but let's are just like input. For example, are just like, how do you call it, text. For example, we use text. This is text. It should still have its same messages, which we know. Yeah, the name will be, let's say, user descript, or let's say user bio, user user bio, or user biography. Then this 4 will come here as the ID because it's for the same purpose for message. And if I save this is what we are having. But now what we need here is a text area. Here now you can't type, I think it can't take more than 50 characters. Yeah, I think it can't take more than 50 characters. It has a limit actually. Let me not specify 50 characters, but it has a limit. Like when you are typing your name, you're typing your email, all those things, they don't expect you to type notes there. So if you need the user now to say enter your biography, for example, enter your biography, enter your biography, you know it's going to be long, so we have to give enough room for that. So what we are going to use is the text area. It's not an input, sorry. Text area. It's not an input, but it comes just like an input. It still has the same name, message, the same name. This name now is what you are sending to the back end person. So you can give it a custom name like user bio. Is what the back end person will handle. The ID will be message, and these are by default. I will explain them to you. So if I save this, see what happens. This is a text area. You can actually type and drag. I'm sure you know how this text area functions. You can actually type and drag. So this now col and row, it actually sets the column and the row. For example, if I write here maybe 4 rows and save, it's going to be smaller to make it contain only, that's for you to see the first 4 rows, not that you can only type 4 rows. Why? You see I'm typing even more than that, but you can only see 4 rows at a time. And same applies to column. So this is just to size the text box, but it's
okay. So
yeah,
basically now you're building for the front end and the back end.
as a front-end engineer, when you are building, you have to give room, or you don't have to build in such a way that back-end person will not be able to incorporate what he's doing. So the only thing I've done here is, since what is a form enables you to interact with the website, and the website now will send what you have submitted to the back end. So since we are dealing with a form and we know it's for interaction, and this message, this input or this data is going directly to the back end person or to the server to handle, we have to give it that room, which is the name field we are giving it, so that backend person can handle it. Even if I remove this name, it will still work. But how will the backend person now receive this value the person has inputted to save into the database or to manipulate it? It's only by this name. This is the only thing you can do, by that name. So the backend person now will now take this and do it his own way. If he needs to save it, if he needs to compare it, if he needs to transform it, this or that, all those things. If he needs to append it to somewhere, fine. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is basically how text area work. Now, if you want this thing you see here, this thing means you can resize it. Now, if you don't want your text area to be resized in your CSS targeting this text area, what you can do is you can say maybe style in your CSS. I'm doing inline CSS now because I don't want to go to CSS. You can say style resize and none, and once I save this, you see you can't resize it again. It's just there, but it's still
But it can expand. Okay.
You can, yes, it's still a text area. You can write, I think you can write much.
As many.
I've forgotten the actual value of what you can write here. The size actually I've forgotten, but if you don't want to resize it, you can use this to resize it in your CSS. So we are still coming to styling, and I'm going to save this to come back to my normal resizing. So that is text area. We are done text area. Button is another kind of form or input element, because you input to the website. You can either create a button like this, button, enter. Once I write something here, this is button 1, and save. See what happens. This is a button. So to use this button now, let me come here. I know I want to change this back to get, so that I will not be getting error. Now to use this button, it's not difficult. Once you click on this button now, this is it. It's just like a submit button too. Once you click on it, it submits its value to the form with the form handler. But what we just wrote was button. Now you can also write input. How do we create a submit button? We used to say input type equals submit, like this. Input type submit. This is how we created submit button before, and we wrote here sub. Let me just write this is button 2 and save. All of these are buttons. I can write it, get a BR here and save, and also I'll get a BR here and save. So I have buttons here, and another third button I'm going to show us is input type button. Value this is button 3 and save. So you can see all of them are buttons, but in HTML and CSS they are mere buttons. Like all of them are just buttons, but when it comes to JavaScript, they are not just buttons. There are some buttons here that if you pass on click to them and do some calculations, do some things in it, they will not function the same way as using a one of these or one of these. But when we get to JavaScript, we'll know what we are talking about. But all of these now are buttons. So if you want to create a button in HTML, like what we have been doing, you can just use this, then use your styling to style this. Well, we are coming to styling. We have not styled anything yet. We're still coming. So these are buttons. Let's go to field set. Okay, let's go to field set and legend. Well, we have treated this. Let's go to field set and legend. You use legend with field set. It's good to use them together. It makes more sense. Now field set just gives a border around a group of elements. For example, if I have, let's say I have these same values again, Control C, I want to duplicate them, Control V and S. Okay, I've duplicated all of this. Let me give it a BR here and save. I've duplicated this. What I would like to do is, let me change the enter your message. Okay, this is different from this, and I want to separate them somehow. What I'll do is use field set to separate this group from this other group. So I'm going to use field set to separate them. Field set. Inside the field set, I'm going to copy what I have for the first.
Yeah. Is
Sorry, I had a call. I'm going to cut this and I'm going to paste it here and save. So see what field set does. It puts this in a different, just like in a different section, but it just gives a border around it just to separate it from this other part of it. That is just what field set does. So if we are using CSS now, we can give the width of this container, and it's going to be shorter than this. Now it's extending from the beginning to the end. Now see what legend does. If this is field set and I'm adding legend at the beginning, and maybe this legend, I say area 1, for example.
Sorry, what really is a function of the field set?
Field
I don't get.
set. Are you seeing this line?
Yeah.
It's just to separate it. It doesn't have any extra function. It's just to separate this section from this section. Maybe when a user is looking at it, the user will know, oh, this section is actually different from this section. Do you understand?
Okay.
Yeah. So now,
Okay.
if I'm using it with legend, this is legend, and the only thing I've written inside legend is legend 1, area 1, sorry, and I save. See what happens. It now becomes a caption to this field set section. Do you understand? This is it now.
Okay.
You see how it's written, like it's a caption describing what is contained in this area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a form of making your code look appealing, or making your site look appealing to the eyes. Now this is the legend, and this is the field set, which is the line. So when the legend is inside the field set, it doesn't just come like a text in a box. It comes in between the line. So that's the difference using a legend. So I think we have treated all the input elements. No, we have not treated all. We have some more. Now let's deal with radio button and text and check boxes. We did not add this here. We did not add radio, and we did not add check box. Save. So the next thing we are going to do is I'm going to let me remove this last section and leave only the one on top. I'm going to remove this and save. Now see what the field set is doing. I can still write another field set where in this field set I'll be dealing with the radio buttons, and let me give it a legend. The legend of, let me give it area 2 and save. See, nothing is inside. That's why it's like this. So in this section now, I'm going to be dealing with radio button. So if I type radio, not radio, sorry, input, everything is input, then I can select the radio button from here. It has its own format. You can type directly, but if you can't really remember the format, you can just come here and take radio button, and remember it's always good to put our label for, let's call it age, and the ID is the label, which is age 2, and the name of this radio button will be, let's call it user age, which is what the back end person will see. That is the only function of this name. Now I'm going to put here maybe select your age. What is a radio button? A radio button is, if you on a radio button, if you select one, then you unchecked. If you check one, you uncheck the other one. If there are 3 or 4 radio buttons, you must select one, only one in it. You cannot select more than one. Let's do this. We are doing this with an example. Now I'll say this is input, and I'm going to give it value. Who is that? Enter value. I'm using value equal to male and save. See what happens. Okay, you see what happens now. The label comes before the radio button, but in most cases you see the radio button coming first. Let's remove it, cut, and put before the label. And we are going to write another one again. Let me just give a space to get another radio button.
The radio buttons are like bullets.
No, not like bullet. Let me put another one. You understand how it comes like. I'm going to get another radio button, or better still, I can just copy all of this. Let me just do this now, and you understand what I'm talking about. And input type is still radio, and once you see the name, see this name now, this name and this name here, once they are the same, that means you are tying them together. Remember that we're coming there, you see what I'm talking about, and the ID will conform to the 4. Okay, and let me change this to male. I just want us to see how it's working, then we can explain the code. Female, and this is a label for, can change this. Radio, I'm supposed to change this. I want to put this to male. This ID, I'm going to change it to male. I want us to select gender, not age. So this ID for female, and this will be female. Okay, and I save. Now see how it works. Have you seen this kind of thing before?
Yeah.
This is what is called a radio button. Now if I come here now and say this is name, where is that name? Where is my name? User age. Let me put user age 1 and save. You see what's happening? Do you understand? Do you understand what is happening now?
No.
It's no longer working as a radio button. A radio button only allows you to select one. If you are selecting one, this one will uncheck itself. If you are checking this one will uncheck itself. So what I did was, this name you are seeing here is what ties these two buttons together. That is what ties this input
two radio buttons together.
Yes. You can put more.
Okay, so
you can put more, and if you are putting more, all of them should have the same name to tie them together, such that if you are selecting one, the other one will know, oh, they have selected my friend, I'm not going to be selected.
Okay.
You understand? So
okay.
This now, the names are the same. User, not user age. Let me just put gender. Or user gender. Try to use user so that you know user is communicating to server. User gender.
gender.
and this one user gender. Save. So this is a radio button. You click on this, this will uncheck. So it's telling you that you must select only male or female. In that case, the value of user gender will either be male or female. It can never be male and female.
Okay.
So anytime you submit your form, the one you've clicked on will now be saved in user gender. And this is what the backend person will see.
ID is male, value is still male.
This ID,
Yeah,
where is value? Where do you see value? Okay, this
under
value here,
the
ID male.
no, not that
No, not
value,
this one, this one.
not that value.
Okay,
Yes.
I want to change this so that you understand this question you're asking now. Let me change it so that you understand what I'm talking about. This value male is what you see here. This male you are seeing here. If I change it to man and save, value man and save. No, it's not this one. It's this one. Value this man. This value you are seeing here as male is what will be saved inside of user gender when you submit this form. For example, let me put a submit button here. Submit input, sorry, input type should be submit. Submit. And if I save this, you are not going to see anything reasonable. You are not going to see. I want to show you what I have on my URL. You're not going to see anything reasonable for now until I send this data. Until I click this and send it. Now you now see what is contained in user gender. They'll say user gender equal to something. For example, I select female here and do submit. What I've selected is user gender. Okay, what is here is
What
male.
is this? Sorry, is this the assignment Skyline asked us for?
Yes, what he asks us to do is create a form with all the form elements. You understand?
Okay.
So these are the form
Okay.
elements we are explaining now. Do you understand? Hello? Do you understand me? Okay. So what I was trying to show you is since we've sent this, if we
Sorry, my background became so noisy.
no problem, no problem.
Mm.
Since we sent this, we feel we select, if we select this,
Okay, so the question I asked was, okay, you are just explaining the whole thing.
this is what he asked us to do. Do a form with all the input elements. So I cannot just be doing a
Okay.
form without explaining it to you how it works.
Without explaining it.
Yes, you need to understand how it works before you use it. Else you not even know how to use it.
Was it what he said, or we should probably design something, anything?
Design something with what? With form, right?
Okay, yes,
With form.
yes.
So you have to understand how it's used. You don't just focus on his assignment. You also learn for yourself because we are going to use it tomorrow. In the next week now, we're going to be done with HTML and CSS. So if you don't learn it now, I don't know when you want to learn it.
Okay.
So what I was trying to show you is if you come to, let me put it side by side. Now, if this is our page we have designed, I can comment this. Comment this, and this is just what we have now, which is, let me refresh this. Okay, this is just what we have now. We start with the input. This is the input, I'm forgetting about legend. We start with input and the type is radio, and we give
Okay,
it a
that is
label.
inside the feed cells.
Let's forget about field set. Field set is just to give us this. You understand?
Okay,
Yeah. So
okay,
let's remove field set if it's getting confusing to you, and I save. So I'll also remove. Let me comment label and also comment this label and save. So what we have now is just this input and this input. Do you understand?
yeah,
Now, these two inputs are tied together. If I click here, this will be highlighted. If I click here, this will be unhighlighted. This one will now be highlighted. But why are they tied together? Because they are separate. They are tied together because they have the same name field. This name here, it has the same name. If I change this name now to maybe something different, to maybe I add 2 here and save, this will not be tied to this one. If I click on this one, it's on its own. If I click on this one, it's on its own. You understand? They are on their own. But once they have the same name, you click on this one, this is selected. Once you click on this one, only one should be selected when it comes to radio button. So this will now be unselected and this will be selected. Let me add another radio button again. Let's make it 3. Radio input, input, and we're selecting radio, and the name, I will leave this ID because we are not using label to tie it with, but let me just leave it. You must not use it, but this name is necessary for radio buttons. Now let me save this without putting the name. Now we have 3. This first one and this second one are tied, but this one is not tied to anyone. That's why it's on its own. I've selected it now. These two can be changing, but this one is not tied to anything because the name is not telling it to be tied to come together with its siblings, which is user gender. If I save this now, all of this now are tied together. So I believe you understand this. All of it are tied together. If I have thousands of radio buttons here, if I want to tie them together, what I'll do is the name, I'll just put them the same.
the name has to be the same.
Exactly. Now, for radio buttons, you know how it always comes. You have the label. You have the radio button and you have the label like this. This is, in most cases, it's like this. And maybe I put a BR here. This one too, you have this, and I put a BR here. And this one too. You can decide to put a label before the radio button by just exchanging them, but in most cases, it always comes like this. If you click on this name now, you don't necessarily need to click on the button. Now, see something. I want to show you something. This is now for, let's use another label for, let's leave this for and write prefer not to say and save. Now see what is happening. All of them are tied together, right? Hello, are you there?
I can hear you.
Okay, all of them are tied together. You agree? Now if I click on this name now, this name male is going to highlight this. If I click on female, it's highlighting this. If I click on no, prefer not to say, why is it not highlighting this? Can you explain that? See, if I'm clicking on their names, it's highlighting, but for this one, it's not highlighting it. Can you say that? Can you tell me anything about it? Can you tell me anything about that?
Okay, why is not highlighting? Prefer not to say.
Yes. But if I click here, it's highlighting it.
Uh,
All of them are tied together. But now if I go
mhm.
to their names, I click on the name, it's highlighting. Click on the name, it's highlighting. Click on the name, it's highlighting. But if I click on the name for this one now, it doesn't highlight it. It doesn't tick the checkbox. Can you say something about it?
Um, because it's not input. It's
No.
not a radio.
It's a radio. This is it. This is the what?
Okay.
This is the last one. This one now. This is the input
Okay, that's the
radio,
last one.
and also this is the label. Prefer not to say. So why it's not highlighting is I've not tied this label to this input, to this radio. I've not tied this thing to this. So how do I now tie it? It's just because of this ID. ID for what? Not for waiting. Let me just say for not to say. And this ID now on the input, which is the radio button, is should take the same for the label, not. Just to let it know that it's the same is tied, they are tied together. So if I click on this now, it will highlight it for me. I don't necessarily need to
Definitely.
come here. You understand?
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
So that is the use of this for you are seeing here, for this, for this, for this. So even if you click on the
Okay.
label,
For
even
not
if
okay.
I get
Okay.
an
The radio is for okay.
yes,
Not
this label
for
now is for
male,
this,
for
for this.
female, for
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. If you look at it now, this label, which is male, is for,
Mm,
that's why they say for male. And the male
yeah, for
has
male.
the ID, the one that has the ID of the same is what is tied to it. But to tie all the radio buttons together, you have to have the same name for the name field. So I'm going to create, let me get a BR here. I'm going to create an input text here, or let me create another input email. This is for email, and the name for this email is email. This is what the user will use to manipulate what he's doing, and the label for what? Mail. Let me just call it mail. I like to make it different. It must not be different. And the ID now will now take the same mail, right? Because the ID and the
Male
for
as
must be
well.
the same. So if I save, I have this, but now there's no text in front of my email to tell me it's an email because I've not given the label anything in the middle. So I'll come here now and give it email, or let me say enter your email address and save. Look at it, and I can give it a BR here to break it so that it can come down and save. You understand? So now this is tied to this. If I click on this, you see email is now focused. That it is now like as if you have clicked on the email input. You understand? If you click on the name, it's now focused, like you want to start typing to it. But you did not click on this field. It's just because of this for male and the ID male, they are the same, so they are tied. So that is the essence of this for. You can still come here and say maybe you put a paragraph here, or you just put a line of text like enter your email and save. Control S. See what we have here. It's still the same thing. It's almost the same thing, or let me just say still the same thing, depending on how you style this. You understand? If you want to bring it to the next line, you can still put a BR here and save. It's the same thing. But now if I click on this name, it's not going to highlight this. The two of them are not tied together, even though what the user sees is still appealing, it's still okay. But your text reader, for example, I mean screen reader, if you are someone who is using screen reader to read your screen for you, when your screen reader reaches this label. It's going to read it for you loud, knowing that this is a label for this input. So that is the essence of also using this label. Your screen reader, if something is reading your screen for you, it's going to reach there and know that this is a label for this input, and it's going to read it out for you. So we are going to be doing checkbox now. Checkbox. Let's do checkbox. What is a checkbox? For a checkbox, it's just like a radio button, but with checkbox, you can select more than one. If you select this one, the answer is correct, and also this answer is still correct. You can still select it, and you can select it. You can select more than one. That is the only difference between radio button and the checkbox. So for a checkbox, what we'll do is input checkbox. Sorry, I'll be back 1 minute. So with checkbox, I'm just going to let me remove everything I've done on let me just remove everything I've done, and we are now dealing with checkboxes. So what I've written here is just input, and I select checkbox type. So the type is checkbox. See what I have here, you can check it, you can uncheck it. But for radio button, don't forget, with radio button we were not able to, let me undo this and save. Radio button, you cannot uncheck a radio button until you select the other one, then it will automatically uncheck itself. So with checkbox, what we have is input, and you come here to select your checkbox, and the name is going to be what can we give to it? Okay, let's give it let's say we want you to select your best brands of cars. Maybe here we have Toyota name. I want you to select your best brand of cars, and let's just put the check input. I want us to put all the check boxes. So let's say we have 4 of them. Control C, Control V, Control V. I want to know why I'm putting it like this, so that let's see the 4 that we can actually select. So that you know it's not really a big issue. It's there already. Let me just put brake here, BR, brake here, BR, save, and I'm going to put a brake somewhere here, BR, just so that I can come to the bottom. Okay, now these are check boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can select all of them. They are check boxes. You can unselect. Now, how do we? This doesn't just make sense like this. This doesn't just make sense. So we can give it a label. We have to give a label for this, label for this, label for this. Just like we know, you give it a label. Label for what? Maybe we call it. We're dealing with brands of cars. Toyota. The name of this will be, you can just call it Toyota. The name, remember, the name is always what will be passed to the back end, and the ID will be this. So even if we just write T here, we should also be able to give it that same T. Toyota. If I save, you don't see anything happening. If I come here and say value, not value, let me just give you maybe Toyota. So if somebody is selecting this first one, you know, we are on this first one here. We are on this first input. If somebody is selecting this, what will be passed to the back end is the person has selected Toyota. So the person, you understand, the person has selected Toyota, the name will be Toyota. Please, I don't know. Are you there?
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Now, if the person is selecting, let me just put, label. Now, label should contain something right up that somebody will see Toyota as a label. Control S. I would like to put, let me remove all of these other checkboxes and put this one at the bottom so that it will make sense. Control X, Control V, Control S. Okay. Delete the Control S. Okay. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is if I select this now, I've selected Toyota, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What will be sent that the name equal to, remember when we did the URL, when we saw what was passed in the URL, name will be equal to Toyota. This is what will be passed like this. Name will be equal to Toyota. So this is what the back end person will handle. Now what the back end person will see, like what I've submitted is Toyota. What I've submitted is this value you see here now is what I've submitted. This is what he will actually see, but this is what he will handle. Handling is, like I'll say, this is his variable. Like he will say X, what was X? And their X becomes Toyota. Yes. So if we have another input again, input of checkbox. Let me undo this. I don't using capital letters sometimes. Input of checkbox, and you have name. Let me call it. Let me put a label here too. And this one will be, let's just call it Lexus. Lexus, and save. And on this, I'm going to put a BR so that it can come down. BR and save. Okay, it now makes sense. Now, if I click on this Toyota, is going to check that box because this and this are tied together. I hope you understand that. This and this are tied together using these four. This 4 and this ID. These 4 now we have used the same name, so they are tied together. But this, if I click on this, it's not going to highlight it because we are not tied them together. So let's tie these two together. What do? We come here and give it maybe Lexus, or let's just give it L for Lexus, or LE for Lexus, and come to the ID for the input and tell it you are targeting this LE. So if I save this and click on this, it's tied together now with it. You understand? Now, if somebody selects this, what will the back end person receive? That's what will be the value the person has selected. You give it a value. And the value can be Lexus. Lexus is what X will contain. X will contain Lexus, and X, this is X. You give it the name you want it to you give it the name of X. I'm going to remove this name of Toyota. Let me just put cars here. So name will be cars. So you can actually select this or this. you are trying to select, you can select multiple. So these two inputs now are saying select your car type or your best car brands. Name is cars. Now value will now be what will be submitted if you choose this value. Then the name, which is x, name x or cars, will be this value, which is the value I've given here, value of Toyota. Not this is just a label. This, you can see Toyota car. See, this is just a label for this. It doesn't really mean anything. So what really matters is your input. This is just a label. So this is how check boxes work. You can still add more to it. Control C, Control V, depending on how many options you want. And you can still come here and put your BR and save. So depending on how many options you want, you can still add more. But if you're adding more, you make sure you also change their value, because the value is very necessary. This is what, if you are selecting answer A for your multiple choice question, select the answer A, this is actually what will be sent that you've selected. So your X will contain Lexus. You understand? Your name, which is, I've given the name variable as cars, will now contain Lexus. So it will be something like this. When handling in the back end, it will be something like this. Maybe your variable cars equal to what? Lexus, as what you've selected. So what you are doing is the same thing as saying your variable x equal to 5 if the person selects 5. If the person selects 4, if the person selects 6, your variable x will now be 6. It's the same thing like here. If the person selects Toyota, your variable cars, which is this cars, I would have written it in capital letter not to confuse you, cars will now be, if the person selects maybe Toyota, this Toyota value here, the value will be passed to the variable Toyota. I know why I'm teaching you and going further to explain how they are used in the back end, because I know after this front end we're going to be going to the back end, so you'll be able to grasp what I was really talking about. So
I don't understand more about these variables.
yeah, you don't understand much about it, right? But you
Yes,
understand
yes,
that name is what the backend person will use to handle it.
yes.
Yes. So when we get there, when we are using it, you now see, oh, this is why we need to give it a name, and also this is why we need to give it a value. But now, as the front end which we are learning, you understand how to implement this. I believe so. You should also understand how to implement the radio button. This is all about the radio button, and this is all about the checkbox. Let these labels not confuse you much. What you need to know about the labels is this for the label is just like a class you give to your
Yeah,
HTML and
I
call it in
understand. I
CSS.
understand the
Okay,
level.
you understand this? Fine. Then inputs now are
Because
not
without the
much.
level, it won't be able to select at the.
Exactly. You just need to tie the label and the input together. And also, for example, if I want to add another checkbox, I can just say input type checkbox and I save. See, it's even giving me all of this. Even if I remove all of this and save, it's still going to give me a checkbox. So you can see.
Okay.
So even if I say I decide not to use for, and I decide to say select me, and let me just, I want to put a BR here and save. You see what is happening?
Okay. Okay. It's more like another name.
You see what is happening? It's still the same thing, right? What I've been doing up here
Yes.
is the same thing.
Yes.
So why do I need to write all these codes now just to implement the same thing with this small code? The difference is,
Is to
for example,
differentiate either you are selecting a car or a human being or age or
no,
gender.
no. What I'm saying is, for example, this section of the code now, this. Let me comment this and save. You see this part now, this part of the code. This is it. This is it. You understand? And this last
Yeah.
line now, this is it.
It's
So
just
why
this
do I
one.
just write this? Why don't I just write this instead of writing all of this?
But this one doesn't have a value or label.
Yes, all those things that are very important. If you are
Oh
just
yes.
designing your
To
form, maybe your front
differentiate.
end. If you're just designing maybe your front end, you don't want back end people to use it, or you just want to create a clone. Even when I'm creating a clone, I always go by this method. It's the standard. Now this is the same as this, but for this now, look at this. It's not tied to this. If you select this, it's not going to select this. You understand? It's not going to select it. That's one. This is not selecting this. It's not tied to it. That's why we can use. You should use for. You should use the label and the for. Now, when it comes to the input, look at the way this one is short. It's just input type checkbox. But what is the difference between this and this? Now, if I select this checkbox, now what will be passed? Nothing will be passed to the back end that
To
you've
the back
selected this.
end.
Nothing will be passed. But if I'm using this now, I'm telling it this thing I'm selecting now,
Yeah. In the
it is
list of
called
cars.
cars. It's the list of cars. Let me put it that way. So if I still have another one here with list of cars, the person will the code will understand that inside the list of cars, what I've selected is Lexus.
Is yeah.
You understand? Or Toyota. Then this ID now is just tying this to this, and this now is actually the value. If I select this, they'll say inside the list of cars, what I've selected is Lexus. But for this, if I select, it doesn't change anything. But this, if I select this, it has actually told it inside the list of cars, what I've selected is Lexus. So if I still have something same as this, maybe under this, and save, these two now, I want to tie them together. I'll still use cars here, then I'll maybe use Toyota here, or maybe Benz here. Now this Benz is not showing here because I've not given it a label.
A label.
So I can come under and give it label, maybe
Benz also.
Mercedes. So now you see Mercedes will show up here. But if you select this, what will be passed to the back end is Benz, not Mercedes. Mercedes is just
Okay.
what the user sees. If you select this, what will be passed as the name of the list of cars which you selected is Benz as the first
The
option.
value.
As the value, exactly. So this is all about form for HTML. If I say input, and you can check here, you still have date and time. For example, if I use date and time, let me use small letter input date and time. It's still, this thing still boils down to what we know, the name, and the, if you say name, you give it name of date and time. So when the user is trying to get the value which when the database the backend user, the backend person is trying to get the date that this person has entered, you just say date and time, you understand? This is what you just use. Or anything you like to write here, you say maybe Didi, you call it Didi, you just say what is the value of Didi, it will be the what the person has selected here. So if I save this, see what happens. You can put date and time here. There's one other good date and time I know. Input date and time, or let me just use date and save. Okay, this is the one I'm talking about. We look at it now. If I select this, the value of this now, then the value of this now will be this thing the person has selected. Understand? This is another input. Just this now has given us this. I'll come here and put.
Okay. Do you on the date and time, do you see you get to give it value and
No, you don't give it value.
label?
This is already the value the person has selected. If the person comes here and
Okay.
select this, this now becomes the value. So
Okay. So you don't get to select the value from this side.
from here, no, you don't give it a value from
Yeah.
here. Why we are giving it a
You
value
don't
from
give
here
it
is
value.
because if, for example, this one I've not given any value now, this one which I've not given any value. If the person selects, this is it, select me. If I select this, what will now become the value? You understand? Are you there?
No, I'm here.
Yeah. If I select this now, what now becomes the value of this? What will you tell your backend
That's a
person the
let
person has selected? What?
that's a let me.
Select me is not the value. Select me is the label. That is why you see it here as label. You don't see values because values are hidden. You don't see input values.
Okay. Okay, that's what I'm saying. That one doesn't get any value to the back end.
This one, okay, this one,
Yeah, no. The date,
yes, it don't get
yes.
it doesn't
Because it
send any
doesn't
value
have.
to the back end. That's why I was telling you that
Uh-huh.
this code now is
But
preferred to this
the
one.
date which you did not add value here
Yeah, it
gets
sends a
value by
value.
itself.
Yeah, it sends value by itself because normally the user will now select the value here. You
Okay.
understand? Then if you are using label, you tie it with this, and this name now you can see my date. So the value you selected will now be my date is equal to what is my date? My date is equal to this value you
The
selected.
person now has to select. Okay.
Exactly. So that's how it is. So for example, now I just use input text. I want to use input type as text. Text. I'm sure you know this. I want to remove all of this. Not necessary for now. Input text. You see what it's giving us, right?
Yes.
You know, I've shown you this before. You know what it does. It's just for you to allow the user to enter anything, maybe name, first name, anything as text. Now, if I say value equal to, let me put or let me put my name, Terence, and save. You see what happens? See what happens here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it
because
has
it
a
has a
value
value
now.
now. Yes, so it's giving it that value just to tell you that if a user enters something here and send, it's going to send that thing as the value of that input. So now I've given it a default value by default. You understand? I've given it this name as value. That's why it's coming like this. But most often you don't see values in inputs like this, except maybe you want it to be maybe this. You can see disabled. It's just you see what happens now. It's just there. Maybe you want to, for example, if you go to Mr. Skyline's Chief Skyline's website where we register for courses, you see your username, but you cannot edit it. That username is in something like this. You can see it, but you cannot edit. It's something like this. It's disabled. That's why you cannot edit it. That's why this one now you cannot edit it. But if I remove this disabled here and save, you can actually edit it.
Okay.
Understand? So the attributes you can pass to form, you can add hidden. You can hide the form. Maybe after something is done, then you can show it. There was one input I created, a form I created the other day. When you click on sign up, email section will be visible, but when you click on sign in, the email section will be hidden using JavaScript. So that is the use of this hidden. Now it's there, but it's hidden. Open. Then with the form itself, this form element, you can add some values there, some attributes there, like maybe autocomplete. If I take autocomplete and on, autocomplete is on, for example, and save, it's going to autocomplete for me. It's doing
Okay.
autocomplete, you understand? Once maybe I'm typing something I've typed before, it's going to autocomplete it for me. That's the use of autocomplete. And you can, there are other values, there are also other things you can use here. Let me see if I have another one. You can still use auto capitalize on it. There is a few of them you can use on form. So I believe this should be the end of um, forms in HTML. We have not gone to styling. Styling is done much like you are doing your normal CSS. You can put classes here and target them. But I'm going to end this video now because I don't want it to. The recording. I'm going to end the recording now. If I were to continue, I'll do another record.